foremost, today marks 52 days since we had a locally acquired case of coronavirus in Victoria. That is an amazing achievement and one that every Victorian can be proud of. I'm obliged though to point out that whilst 52 days is very impressive and the product of a lot of hard work and commitment by Victorians across the state, that's not the same as a vaccine being here. So we all need to, as we work through this Christmas week and into summer holidays, we need to be vigilant around all the rules and playing our part to keep this virus at bay. In terms of additional cases, there is one new case reported to the department in the last 24 hours, and that person is safely tucked away in quarantine. That brings to a total of 13 active cases, all of which are in the quarantine system. A total of 13,695 test results were received today. That is a very strong number for a Sunday, and I thank each and every one of those more than 13,500 Victorians for getting tested. It's exactly how we stay ahead of this virus. It's exactly how we protect you, your family, and every single family. We have to keep those numbers up right throughout the summer. Now, as you know, Judge Coate has handed down her second and final report, her inquiry into hotel quarantine. First of all, can I thank former Judge Coate for her work and the work of all of her team, made more challenging by the fact that, of course, with coronavirus restrictions, that work had to be done in very unusual ways remotely, and we are very grateful for her 500-page report and the many thousands of hours of work that she and her team have done. This process was established in order to give us the answers that we were all as Victorians entitled to. What has occurred is a very detailed report. At the outset, it is our intention to accept all the recommendations that Judge Coate has made. I say intention because we just have to work through some of the detail of some of the recommendations that she has made, but it is our preference and our intention, and we'll spend the summer to consider the report in more detail. Many of those recommendations have already occurred. We're already doing that work, for instance, testing every single member of staff and their household contacts every day and weekly. There are others that we've already basically done that important work, made those important changes. At the outset, beyond that statement of intention to implement all of those findings, all those important recommendations, I want to apologise to the Victorian community for the very clear errors that were made in this program. I think that the way in which the program was established, it had to be done quickly. That's the nature of a global pandemic. There is no rule book as such. I think decisions about who worked in the program is less an issue. It is more a matter, and the report finds this, the lack of that very detailed oversight, checking, double checking, triple checking, looking very closely every day at what's occurring in hotel quarantine. That is where the significant breach of hotel quarantine comes from, and the resulting transmission comes out of hotel quarantine, a number of families at large gatherings, then it seeds into large workplaces and back and forth, and then we have a wave that simply could not be pulled up without putting very significant restrictions on. For that, I am sorry, we are sorry. Our commitment and my commitment as the Leader of the Government is to learn those lessons and to make sure that an error like this, that lack of oversight, that lack of due diligence to check and double check that things are as they should be, and that if a problem is found, it is found early rather than being found too late. That is my commitment. We will do that work. Much of it has already been done, and these lessons, this critical lesson about oversight and more direct management of significant risks, is not just a factor or a feature of a global pandemic. It's something that I think is an important lesson to learn in many different contexts. To give you one example, if I could turn back the clock and receive daily reports on what happens in hotel quarantine as I do now, then of course I would. If we could have a system of oversight that was, I think, the best in the country back then as we do now, then of course we would put those steps in place. But none of us have the ability to change history. We can only learn those lessons and make sure that the reforms and the changes that are essential are made. to make it far less likely that these sorts of errors could ever occur again. Just quickly, whether it's testing every member of staff every day, whether it's having no contractors, regardless of what industry they work in, working in hotel quarantine. Instead, every employee is an employee of the Victorian Government and an exclusive employee of the Victorian Government. There are no second jobs, there's no moonlighting. Whether it's embedding a Deputy Chief Health Officer in the administrative office, COVID Quarantine Victoria, to have an embedded public health response every hour of every day, not just when there are problems, but in the prevention of those problems in the first place, and many other examples. We have established a new hotel quarantine system that if we had our time again, we would go back and we would make sure that that oversight, that vigilance, that sense of real-time monitoring of problems was a feature of the scheme that was set up all those months ago. We can't do that. We can only learn those lessons, offer our sympathies and condolence to everyone, both those who lost a loved one in the first wave and those who lost a loved one in the second. All we can do is offer our support, our sincere apology, our sorrow at their loss. This will be an incredibly difficult week. There will be people missing from the Christmas dinner table on Friday, and I am deeply sorry and saddened by that. But my commitment is to not only apologise, because apologies are very important, particularly when you mean it, but to also offer my commitment to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to learn these lessons and make sure that these sort of mistakes, these sorts of failings can never be repeated again. As I said at the outset, it is our intention to implement all of the recommendations that Judge Coate has put forward. I wish I could give you an ironclad on that. We just have to work through a couple of small details. For instance, you would remember that from the first report, there was a recommendation to not have hotel quarantine, but to instead have returned travellers going home. If we had done that, that would have been inconsistent with the National Cabinet decision, and therefore we would run the risk of borders being closed to Victoria, for instance. You can never make hotel quarantine zero risk. We've seen that in Adelaide, we're seeing it in Sydney at the moment, we've seen it in New Zealand, we've seen it in lots of different parts of the world. What we can do and what we have to do and what my government must do is learn these lessons, make these changes and do everything we can to make sure that we do not have a third wave. That is my commitment. That's what I'm spending every hour of every day doing. We can't go back. We can't change what occurred. We can only learn those painful, tragic lessons and do everything possible to avoid a third wave. That is what we are doing, and that is the leadership and the commitment and the hard work that we are focused on.